One over there.
Good evening, everybody. This is Huge Pop Wrestling Podcast. I'm Scott, your host. Tonight I have a guest that is a president and promoter of the SIWC promotion. They call him Mr. St. Louis, and he is the mayor of East Carondelet, the St. Clair County 911 director. In 2012, he was awarded the MWR Lifetime Achievement Award. Can we welcome to the show Mr. Herb Simmons? Welcome to the show, my friend. How you doing?
Good. Thank you, Scott. I appreciate the invite, and it's always a pleasure to come on and be able to tell stories with, as I said, individuals who share the same passion that I do of professional wrestling. And your podcast is a way to keep the old school and old style of wrestling alive.
I love that. Thank you so much. And I'm a big indie guy, so I can't wait to hear about your stories. And I just think the indies don't get enough credit. I got these mainstream WWE, the AEWs, but the guys in the indies, they bust their tails day in and day out, and it's just amazing the stuff that they go through. So I'm excited to hear stuff about where you've been. But I want to touch it first on the 2012, the MWR Lifetime Achievement Award. Can you talk a little bit about that and how that has helped you in your life, and how that makes you feel as a person? It's got to be rewarding.
Yeah, the NWR Missouri Wrestling Revival, the gentleman who ran that business, Brian Kelly, you talk about somebody who busted their behinds and went out and went show after show all over the Midwest, taking photographs and writing articles and producing a book each year of the indie wrestlers out there. And you said it right, the people who are on the independent circuit, which I really don't like the word independent, because I say they are all professional wrestlers. When they get their license in the states that require them, it says professional wrestler. So, but the word indie has been around for many, many years, and it will be around for a lot longer. But they don't get enough credit. They go out there and make a little bit of money, but they're chasing their dreams, and a small percentage of them will ever reach the big stage. But the award I got that year, it meant a lot coming from Brian, and because, like I said, he just didn't hand them out to anybody. He recognized the work that had been done through SICW, which is Southern Illinois Championship Wrestling, and I still stay in contact with Brian. He's not as active as he used to be, because in life things come up, and sometimes we get focused away, but he's still a great wrestling fan, and he still loves professional wrestling. And I appreciated the award that he gave me that year, and it definitely it means a lot to me.
That's awesome. We have a friend over here, Jim, the Big Texan Hoffroth. He said, "Hello, everyone." So hello, thank you for joining the chat.
That's actually Jim. Big Texan is actually the SICW current classic champion right now.
Well, welcome to the show, champ. In the beginning, when did you start loving wrestling? I mean, because you've been in the business for over 50 years, I think. And so when did you start loving wrestling as a child?
When I was a little youngster, back in the day, I grew up in the housing projects in East St. Louis, Illinois. And I've been asked that question many times over the years. But, living in the housing projects back in the day when things were a lot different than they are now. We didn't have any air conditioning. Had a little oscillating fan that we put in the window to try to circulate the air, but it would be so hot. And back where I grew up in East St. Louis, we got wrestling at the Chase, which was out of St. Louis, and it actually started on television in 1959. But we used to get to the wrestling out of Chicago, Bob Luce show up there, which had the Bobo Brazils and Crusher and Dick the Bruiser and Moose Showlock. But I remember as a youngster, my mom was a big wrestling fan, and her and I that was what bonded us together. And of course, when wrestling used to come on, it was on Wednesday nights before it moved to Saturday, and then they rebroadcast it on Sunday. But it was at a real young age, and I remember the guys like Farmer Marlin, people like that, Ronnie Etchison, Wilbur Schneider, Baron von Raschke, just what I tell everybody these days is all the boys are out there and girls that are out there working out. They're actually they continue to build on the foundation at the like the names those guys I mentioned built. And if it wasn't for those type of individuals back then, there would be no wrestling. And so yeah, it was a real early age, and I just I got attached to it, and to this day I'm still a fan of not so much the new stuff, but the old stuff.
And I gotta say, you're correct. We have no clue. Being myself, I mean, I'm 50 some years old, and I don't know what you know as far as what the talent was. And I agree, man. They must have they laid the foundation for what we have now. And I gotta say thank you to those guys back, what they did back then, what you did back with then promoting and stuff like that. So because we really, I don't think we'd have wrestling unless it was for you guys from back in the day. So I appreciate everything you guys are doing. So growing up, who was your favorite wrestler growing up?
Man, oh man, that's another question I get asked all the time, and I have to have the same answer. I mean, I have had the honor of knowing so many of the greats, but in St. Louis, early on, I always enjoyed the likes of the Johnny Valentines or the Cowboy Bob Ellis,
Okay.
people like that. I mean, I can still remember some of the angles and feuds that used to go on back in the day. A big one was between Cowboy Bob Ellis and Nature Boy Buddy Rogers. That just really to this day, I can almost call the match blow by blow on how it went down as they was building up to the big main event at Kiel Auditorium in St. Louis. And but they told that storyline on television for about almost 8 to 12 weeks. And so I mean, yeah, just the guys back there. I used to like the Farmer Marlins with his mule kick that he would use to finish his opponent off. But there's no way I could just name one because that's how much I enjoyed the business. And it's like today somebody says, well, Hulk Hogan was the number one guy who made wrestling, and that's everybody. We all have opinions. Everybody has their favorite. I've got a lot of favorites. Believe me, Bruiser Brody, one of my all-time greats. Not only was a good wrestler, but he was a dear personal friend of mine. And he's always, when you got into the later years, he was by far the guy that I dealt with on a regular basis.
Right, right. That's awesome, man. Because you're right. I am a Hulk Hogan guy. I can remember the day he walked down the aisle at Daytona Beach and turned on Macho Man and joined the NWO. But what you said is right, exactly right. The guys before him is what paved their way for Hulk Hogan's and Macho Man's and Ric Flair's and stuff like that. And storylines back then. I was going to save this for last, but storylines back then compared to storylines now. I mean, I watch wrestling a lot, and I can think of maybe one storyline that stands out, and that's the Bloodline storyline. There's not very many, and so back then, was it different?
Yeah, it was definitely different. And like I said, I see you've got what you got playing there in the background, and our promotion, SICW, is based on old school, old style wrestling storylines. And what we would like to do is tell the story and then have the final match or the climax, whatever you want to call it, several weeks down the road. I mean, we've actually done storylines and feuds that's lasted up to a year.
Okay.
And the fans continue to follow it. And that's what it's about. What the men and women do when they step into that SICW squared circle is to give the fans their money's worth, because without the fans and the wrestlers, there is no promotion. And I get credit all the time from people saying, "Oh, you did this, you did well." I'm just a small part of that. I'm not the ones out there taking the bumps, and I'm not the ones that's out there trying to make the fans happy. Sure, I can help put the cards together, but the guys that are out there really busting their butt are the ones that deserve all the credit. But yeah, I don't know. It's everybody in their own. Like you said, nowadays you can remember one storyline. If you turn on any other night of the week, it seems like okay. It's a wrestling match, so what? But you know, back in the day, you thrived to watch the next week's episode because you wanted to see how that story was, coming out. It's just like watching a TV program nowadays. You want to see the final episode, and it just kept you on your edge of your seat and wanting more of it. And I think that's what happened, and that's what I think the business is lacking nowadays.
Oh, you're right. Because when I watched Saturday Night Live, Saturday Night Main Event, I was see like the Roddy Piper's Pit where Hogan gets his necklace ripped off, and then we didn't have TV yet until maybe 2 weeks later where we seen the next one, and that got you hyped up. So, but now we're so flooded with product that it's just watching wrestling. I guess is what you said it perfectly. It's just watching wrestling. So when you got into the business, why did you choose to be a promoter?
Well, the story of that is I was a young man at the right place at the right time. The president of the National Wrestling Alliance, Sam Muchnick, who was from St. Louis. The office of the National Wrestling Alliance was based in St. Louis. A young gentleman at that time, he was about 16, was 16 years old, didn't even have a driver's license. Name was Larry Matasek, who was a dear friend of mine. He actually went to work for Sam when he was 16 years old. Did everything from sweeping the floors to calling in the results to the local radio stations, because back in the day, everybody, they were interested on who won. Did Big Thunder Gene Kaniski beat Fritz von Erich on that Friday night? And so, they would call in those late results, and Larry did that, and he worked his way up in the office. Like I said, he did everything from emptying the trash to going to the mailbox and post office box and getting the mail. And he never really had another job all his life, but wrestling. And he was kind of the protege of Sam Muchnick. And Sam was the president of the National Wrestling Alliance off and on for over 41 years. And like I said, being a fan, knowing Larry, knowing what he got to do, his dad would drive us to the office when Larry was supposed to go over and clean up or do whatever. And I had the honor and pleasure of going with him. And Sam always told us, what you hear in this office stays in this office. What you see stays here. You don't take anything out of here. You can open up and go through all the files you want. And it's kind of ironic to this day, I have all those files that was left over, all the results from the cards that took place in St. Louis, whether they be on the TV matches or on the house shows at the auditorium. I can tell you how many matches Dick DeBruzer had, or whoever was in St. Louis and wrestled. I have all the results from that. I have a copy of all the programs that they used to send out to their fans. They had a mailing list, and but all the programs with the matches that was going to be coming up and the storyline on them. So I got copies of all of that, and early young age, and it just blossomed from there. The day that I really got to meet Sam, where I really got to sit and talk with him, was while we were having dinner one night. And he told me, he said, if you keep your ears shut and your mouth closed and your ears open, you'll go a long way in this business. And it was 50 years this February that I've been doing that. Like I said, got to meet all of them, got to work with many, many guys. It's Sam, Larry, people like Bruiser Brody introduced me to. So it's a good lesson that some of the guys should take, come in, do your job, and keep your ears open, your mouth shut.
Yeah. Sometimes you think, I think that's good for everybody to pay attention to that statement sometimes. So, man, and I got to say, how often do you open those vaults to watch that old stuff?
Every chance I get. It's I stay pretty busy, pretty active with my day job. But when I get in those right now we stay pretty busy with shows. We do a lot of work with nonprofit organizations, whether it be fire departments, Legion halls, KC halls, whatever it may be. Um, that's what we've done for many, many years, help them raise funds. So what we try to do is help as many of them out, and year after year we go back and help them. But on a weekend, if I'm sitting around, I'll pull out a tape and throw one in. Or I've had a lot of them uh, transformed over into DVDs to try to preserve them. I have all the I won't say all. I'll say 90% of the footage from the St. Louis wrestling at the Chase. And then recently, I just acquired the library of Dick the Bruiser TV. Those are still on the TV reels, and so I'm in the process of slowly getting them downloaded, and have got a couple of them done, and using some of that footage on our TV show that we do every Sunday night. We add in an old classic from St. Louis along with the new stuff, and if you watch more of our Sunday night show, you'll see how we put that in there, and kind of mixes the old with the new.
Right, and I love how the ring announcer and the wrestler come at the front of their ring like they do after matches, kind of like the old vibe when Vince McMahon had, or can't remember I can't think of his name, but they came out to the front of the ring and they talked to the wrestler. That's one thing I noticed when I was watching this today. It's pretty cool. So I'm gonna get some people here that want to say hi to you, Austin Michael Baldridge, AMB. Glad to see you, such a legend like Herb Simmons on the podcast. This is awesome. Hi Herb. Hope you're doing well.
Hello, Austin. I appreciate the kind words.
SICW is the place to be.
Tyler Cooley, he's a cool one. Tyler is a good SICW fan, and we appreciate everything Tyler does for us.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for coming into the chat. Sit back for a good hour of talk wrestling. So November 2021, you received the Bruiser Brody Achievement Award as well. What can you tell us about that award?
Well, as I said, Bruiser Brody was a dear friend. In fact, back in 1988, the weekend before he got murdered in Puerto Rico, he was with us in Cahokia, Illinois. We had done a lot of work together over the years. Through Larry and Sam, they'd introduced me to Bruiser Brody. Frank Goodish was his real name. He taught me a lot about the business. He taught me a lot about how to negotiate with the wrestlers, because he was known to be a tough negotiator. And he basically told me that you got to stand your ground, plant your feet in the concrete, and they may turn you down the first time, but the more shows you produce, the more talent you bring in, the more these guys will sit back and say, whoa, man, Herb Simmons and SICW has this going on. And I got to say, I didn't have a lot of guys, when I called them, didn't turn me down, because of when I mentioned Bruiser Brody's name and Larry Matisek and Sam Muchnick. Not just one foot got in the door, both of them got in the door. And I built the reputation, and I'm not bragging or anything, but I'm told all the time that I've got a good reputation in the business, because like Sam Muchnick, I try to be honest with everybody. I tell people what I'm going to do, and it's done. And that's what Sam was known for, being an honest man, being a tough man. And I can be tough when I have to, as far as negotiating. I'm not going out there and taking on the likes of some of these guys like a Telecom. And but again, if we want to sit down and talk business and talk about promotions and talk about storylines and how many shows I can give you and what you want to do then I can negotiate that real well. And that award, and right there behind me, I don't know if you can see, there's a big picture of Bruiser Brody.
Yeah.
And then the gentleman in the middle is Larry Matisek, and then the gentleman on the end is Sam Muchnick. And they are the three individuals that I give credit to for my success in the business. It's been a lot of headaches. It's been a lot of stress at times, but I wouldn't change it for anything, because I've enjoyed it. Everybody keeps asking me how long I'm going to keep going. I say, well, the tank and the gas is getting low. After all these years, I've done just about everything. I've promoted shows at places that nobody else has or ever could, and but we'll see what happens, what the future holds there.
Yeah. I was going to ask you that question. How long do you think you're going to go? So now I won't ask that, but would you say that your promotion, you're the longest running promoter around the business? I mean, could you claim that as I mean, you've been doing it for 50 plus years, right?
I don't claim it, but I have people that's told me that I'm the longest running promoter in the business, and like I said, I don't know if that's a fact, but I've had people tell me that. If somebody else has been doing it longer, I don't know who that would be. Um, so, I mean, I guess Vince, of course, they said he retired, but we know he didn't. He's still got his hands involved in it. So he's been doing it a long time. But I don't compare myself to the Vinces of the world or anybody like that. I never have. I don't compare our product to him, because I think if I did, that would be a detriment to our product. Because
No,
because they're, I mean, we have good die-hard fans that still love the old school, old style wrestling. And again, I mean, everybody who watches the new stuff out there today, or it's not so new now, it's been out there for a long time. But I think that if I was Vince and I had the libraries that he had, he ought to be doing what SICW is doing. Is every week you have a captive audience. You mixed a little of that flavor in there with some of the Jimmy Snukas of the world, people like that, and mix them in with your new stuff. We call ours the Promoter's Corner, and we take them back in time, into the time machine. And like I said, you may see two of our local guys who are making a name for themselves, and then the next match you see Dick the Bruiser against Ric Flair. So it's a little trip back in time that works, because the fans really like it.
Your champion says 50 more years.
yeah. He. I don't have that, I can tell you, but it's fun. When you're doing the TV the way we do it, it's a different animal with wrestling. It's a whole another concept of it, and things have to be timed out and for your time slot. But it's fun doing that. I enjoy doing that. Larry Matasek, that was the part that he loved about it, and he taught me that. I used to sit in the control room with him at KPLR TV channel 11 and watch him call the different angles that he wanted the shots. And so now when I get to sit there and do that, I reminisce back to Larry say, "Oh, look at that. That's money. That's money right there. That shot right there. That's a good close up." And so that's a fun part of doing it there. But I still say that without the guys like the Big Texan and Night Train Gary Jackson and Attila Khan and Bobby D and the Sean Vincents of the world, the guys like that, and the newcomers that are coming up. We have a training academy that Cowboy Bob Orton Jr. runs for us. He's got a team out there called the Top Guns that are making a name for themselves. If it wasn't for guys like that, there is no Herb Simmons, there is no SICW. And then all the great SICW fans that come to the shows and support us and share our stuff that we put out there on social media. That's what helps us keep going.
So would you say the love of the business is what drives you to keep on doing this?
Yeah, I think so. I've always said that the fans will tell me when they've had enough of SICW. When they quit coming, then we really know that it's time. And so far, I mean, they continue to come. I've got fans that's followed me for 40 plus years. The Bullion family, people like that, Sally and Ken and Dolores and Rob and Karen and people like that they come each and every show that we have, not just once a month, but when we're running multiple shows, they show up at different places. And those are diehard wrestling fans, but I think they're more diehard SICW fans than anything else.
Yeah, gotcha. So if you had to pick one huge pop moment of over your 50 years, and I know that's not a fair question, what moment would you say that would be? The biggest moment?
The biggest moment, that's without the moment of having that first meeting with Sam Muchnick. I mean, gosh, he was a god back then. He was the peacekeeper. He was a gentleman who, the mediator that was able to sit down and when you had territories running back then, and when there was disputes going on, he was the one that got woke up in the middle of the night, and the two promoters were arguing over the champion and who was going to do what, and Sam had to explain it, and there was hard decisions that he had to make at times. But had I not had that opportunity through the likes of Larry Matisek introducing to me, I mean, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you tonight. That's just a fact, because I don't know of anybody else that would have gave me that opportunity, that shared the business with me like him and Larry did, and told me how to make the connections. And in this business, if you get labeled as a being dishonest or being a promoter that nobody wants to deal with, you might as well throw the towel in, because it's a close knit business, and not so much today, but back in the day. But I try to keep the business the way it was, the way I grew up around it, and it's so oversaturated, in our area in the Midwest. There's so many promotions running. I wish them all the luck in the world, but when you look at the product, I think is the proofs in the pudding of what you do. And when you have success of fans continuing to come, that tells me you're doing something right. But I would say that, yeah, that first meeting with Sam was what got me where I'm at today.
Your champion says, wrestling at the MAC, we will also be going back to the ballroom where the wrestling at the Chase was held. Can't wait to hear stories about the Chase.
Yeah, we do. We also do private shows. We did one just last week at it's an apartment complex in downtown St. Louis, Missouri. A real nice, classy place. They did it for the residents. It was right at poolside, outside. It was great. We'll have some pictures of that coming up on the show this Sunday night. But the MAC that he's talking about is the Missouri Athletic Club. We've been there 3 years in a row now, I think. And this year we're taking Jake the Snake Roberts in with us, Hacksaw Jim Duggan, and the Mouth of the South Jimmy Hart's coming back with us. And then in October we'll be going back to the Chase Park Plaza Hotel, where wrestling at the Chase first started in 1959. We've got a private show there, and already we got Bret the Hitman Hart will be with us, and Jimmy Hart will be on that card.
Nice.
And those are private shows. Unfortunately, they're organizations that raise money for good charity causes, and so they've asked us, which I feel it's an honor for them to ask SICW to be the ones that are that's going to host it.
100%. That has to be an honor, because I mean, you're in this St. Louis area. They could have very well went somewhere else, but they chose you. So that must tell you and your roster and your team that helps do all this, must tell you that you guys are doing something amazing. So
yeah, and like I said, we've done shows at the minor league Grizzlies ballpark in Sauget, Illinois. We've been there a couple years in a row. We produced the only show at the fabulous Fox Theater in St. Louis, Missouri, back in the 80s, with an all-star card: Bruiser Brody, Jerry Blackwell, Kamala the Ugandan Giant. We had the midgets on that card. We had the ladies. So when we come in with the best of the best to do a show.
So does SIWC work with other promotions around the area?
Yeah, SICW, there's a little history there. I get accused of not wanting to work with anybody, and that's the farthest thing from the truth. That's a falsehood that is told by other promotions that, for whatever reason, don't appreciate what we do. Several years ago, my locker room came up with a recommendation that you couldn't work for us and work for another promotion within 25 miles of the county limits signs. Some of them wanted it to be 50 miles. Well, back in the day, it was a couple hundred miles. You couldn't work for another promotion. But I said, no. I said, okay, if that's what you guys are wanting, we'll do 25 miles. Well, these other promotions thought that I was trying to restrict people from working, but they don't understand the concept of road trips. They don't understand the concept of, they'll try telling me, well, we want our guys to get exposure. Well, getting exposure doesn't mean you work for me tonight and then next weekend you work 5 miles down the road for the next promotion, because 99 and 9/10 of the time you're working in front of the same crowd. Right. So that's not getting you exposure. A road trip means you get in a car in St. Louis and you drive to Chicago, or you drive to Iowa, or you drive to Tennessee, and that's what a road trip is. You got to do different audience, different talent in the locker room with you, and I think that's what causes some guys to get complacent because they don't want to go out and work with other guys. But I do work. I work with a couple of companies in St. Louis, New Breed Wrestling down in southern Missouri. I work with ACW. American Championship Wrestling. I work with Impact Pro Wrestling up in the Iowa area, Minnesota. In fact, I was just up there at the Tragus Museum Hall of Fame 2 weeks ago. And my friend Troy Peterson, that runs Impact Pro Wrestling, puts the wrestling show on there. And a couple of our guys were up there, Gary Jackson, Attila Khan. I've worked with the gentleman who's not with us any longer. Bert Prentice was with, he owned Championship Wrestling in Tennessee. Did a lot of work with him over 50 years. And then the Space Cowboy Jason Jones, Mid-State Championship Wrestling in Arkansas and down in Springfield, Missouri. So I work with the promotions that want to work with us. We share talent back and forth. That's territorial wrestling. And some of these other promotions could take a lesson from that. And you know, I try to explain that to them, but if they don't want to, you can lead the horse to the water, but you can't make them drink it.
There you go. You can. So what's the main focus and purpose of SICW? What's the mission of SICW?
The mission is simple, is to give the fans the best old school wrestling that their parents and grandparents grew up on, because history is what makes us look into the future. We have to know where we all come from to know what's going to happen. And when you sit around and we had the discussion earlier today about the Wrestling at the Chase book. I had the honor of helping Larry Matasek write that first Wrestling at the Chase book. I think it's been 17, 18 years ago. I'm old and I lose track of time. But that told the story of Wrestling at the Chase in St. Louis, about Sam Muchnick, about everything that got started in wrestling in St. Louis. And then here a year or two ago, I was asked to participate in the second Wrestling at the Chase book that was authored by Mr. Ed Wheatley. A coffee table book that's loaded full of a bunch of pictures and stories. So again, that's the history that's being preserved. And then I was part of a documentary of Wrestling at the Chase called Head Over Heels that Ed Wheatley produced through PBS Channel 9 out of St. Louis, Missouri. And I highly recommend that anybody who's listening, that if you haven't watched that, just go to the PBS channel and you should be able to find it there, or pick you up a copy of the Wrestling at the Chase book, both of them. Larry's book was more of the story of St. Louis and Sam Muchnick. He wrote several books. He wrote the book on the life of Bruiser Brody with Barbara Goodish, Bruiser Brody's wife, who's a dear friend of mine. And every year we do the Bruiser Brody Memorial in May. She comes in for that. And so the mission, I think, is simple. We're trying to give the fans what their parents and grandparents enjoyed that is still a household name today. I mean, you talk to, oh yeah, wrestling in St. Louis. Oh yeah, Dick the Bruiser, Johnny Valentine, the Funks, the Briscoes, Gene Kaniski, Whipper Billy Watson, and the list goes on and on. So that's kind of the mission.
Okay.
There's no fame and fortune. It's just that, we're fans. And just like you're doing your show because you're a fan.
You're absolutely correct, man. I do this on like 6 days a week, and it's because I'm a fan. And I tell you what, I told you on like in text messages. My wife and I work for foster kids. We have 8 kids in an emergency shelter. So if I can take this 1 hour and a half with a wrestling fan, promoter, wrestler, it's almost like my self care. I can unwind and just talk and just forget about what's going on in the real world. And again, I say I thank you for you guys for producing all this stuff. So us guys like me can have this hour and a half to to relax. And
Well,
this is just
I applaud you and your wife for what you do for the foster children. I mean that's awesome. I think that there definitely is a need for that, and for you and your wife to do that, I take my hat off to you.
thank you, sir. I appreciate that. So you mentioned a bunch of big names that you came through the SICW in the past. Can you, other than your champ that's sitting in the chat room, what big name talent do you have in a SICW?
Like I said, it's a champion. Big Texan is the champion now. He's the one that's got the bullseye on him, of course, because he's got the gold. But I've got guys like the Night Train, Gary Jackson, who got the name Night Train from the late Bruiser Brody. Gary Jackson has been with me a long, long time. He's a retired military person, but he hasn't aged a bit. He can still go out there and tumble with the best of them, the young guys and the old guys. But I got guys who were trained by Harley Race, Attila Khan, superstar Steve Fender. Of course, everybody knows the name Harley Race, and one of the toughest in the business. Trained these guys. Sean Vincent, Jason Breed is in the locker room. I've got some guys from the other organizations that come up with us that come and help do our TV. We got a group that's called Devastation Incorporated that's led by Stephen E., who is from the Mid East, and he's here to purchase SICW come hook or crook. And so that's kind of what he's here for. And he's got the Telecon and people like Sheik Jake Prater and them in his arsenal. And then Peyton Ayers is in his arsenal, in his army. And they're running rampant all over SICW right now. But guys like the Big Texan and Gary Jackson and Bobby D. And Bobby D is... he 2 years in a row he won the Bruiser Brody Battle Royal. We do that every May. This last May we had over 50 legends that came in for the Bruiser Brody Memorial, and the big $64,000 question. Everybody, I get a call every day from somebody or a text message or an email wanting to know if we're going to have a SICW Fan Fest #2 because there'd never been one in St. Louis before, and we pulled it off this last May, and everybody had a great time. And Bruiser Brody's wife came in again. We had the Texas death match between Attila Khan and the Big Texan, and that's where the Big Texan won the title. Of course, Texas death matches were big in St. Louis. They were big in Texas, of course. Dory Funk Jr.'s father, Dory Sr. is the one who invented the Texas death match, and so we were able to have Dory come on and do a interview and talk about the rules of the Texas death match. So that kind of added some flavor to all of it.
Cool. Tyler Cooley, thank you for all the compliments and the conversation you are in the chat. I appreciate that. Jim, the champ, thank you for your comments, and I appreciate everybody chatting up the chat board. So in 2006, SICW was awarded the best independent promotion in the country. That had to make you feel good about what you were doing and what you're still doing.
Yeah, we actually, I think that was from the Heartbeat Radio, and we actually won that 2 years in a row. The Heart Foundation, everybody that's in the business knows the Heart Foundation out of Canada. Bob Johnson, they did a weekly podcast, and I was honored. I used to tune into them as much as I could, and I was as a guest on their show several times when they would have different guests on, like Abdullah the Butcher or Lou Thesz's wife, Charlie Thez, people like that. And they'd always have me come on to talk about the St. Louis deal. And I'll never forget the night they called me and said, "Hey, you were voted the top promotion that
Mm.
year by the fans, which, yeah, it was great. It was a great accolade. And of course, I share that with all of our locker room and our fans because, like, as I said early on this program, I'm just a little spoke in the wheel that gets to say I'm the promoter, but without the fans and the workers, and then the groups out there like the Heartbeat Radio program. Those things. I'd be lying if I say it didn't mean anything because they do. They make you feel good. It makes you feel a little sense of accomplishment of all the years of what you did.
Awesome. So that we can find you on Roku, obviously back there on SICW Explosion. Is there any another YouTube channel that you have besides SICW Explosion?
Yeah, and you can search it in under SICW Championship Wrestling, All Star Championship Wrestling. It's on there too, and our show is on every Sunday night on YouTube and on Facebook, and then we're on the Paranormal Intrigue Television in St. Louis, and it's on I think on Saturdays on that. But the best way is on YouTube, and like I said, it's we're having fun with it. What we do is we have a show like, for instance, August 12th, we do our house show. And then the 13th, the guys come back on that Sunday at noon, and we tape 4 hours of the next 4 weeks of shows that we show. And that way there we build up our storylines. And then before you know it, we're back at the Belle Claire Fairgrounds at Belleville, Illinois for the next house show. And like on August the 12th, we've got WWE Hall of Famer Tito Santana will be joining us. We've had Tony Atlas, Cowboy Bob Orton. They were my tag team champions for a few months. We did a show at the Shriners, a fundraiser for them, which we'll be doing another one coming up in October this year. Did one earlier this year for them, and they were so impressed with what we did, they asked us to come back again. So
nice.
And that's what we, as I said, you're doing something right when you do repeat business, and because there's so much business out there, promotions that these organizations can call people, and I have them. I'll be honest, they call me and say, well, we talked to so and so, and we checked them out, and then we checked you out, and again, everybody does their own thing, and everybody's doing the best they can do and what they can try to do. But I think professionally, we do it the old school way.
I like I said, I watched that all today, and I loved it. So, would you say that St. Louis is still the hub of pro wrestling today?
Oh, it always will be. I say that, and I'll say that until, in fact, that will probably be put inside of my coffin because. I believe that. I believe that Sam built that. I believe he left it in the hands of Larry for a short time when he had his promotion, and even after that, with what we are continuing to do. I won the Red Bastine Award. I don't know what year it was at the Cauliflower Alley Club, and when I went out to accept that award, because I'm really a big supporter of the Cauliflower Alley. I'm their ambassador, the membership of that organization, and it's an organization that helps workers if they fall on hard times. And when I went to get that award, I was sitting there, and I mean, there were people like Sergeant Slaughter and Kevin Sullivan, and just a host of legends that always attend that. B. Brian Blair is the CEO, president of that, and I remember after my acceptance speech, he come up and kind of chewed me out and said, Herb, this was about your night, and here you're giving us all these accolades. And I said, well, that's because that's what Sam would want me to do, because without you guys, there is no Herb Simmons, there is no SICW, so there is no St. Louis Wrestling. And I'll give you an example. When we had the Fan Fest in May, it started off, we were only going to have like half a dozen guys come in, because it had never been done in St. Louis. And it just snowballed. I mean, every day, every night, I was getting a call from one of these legends saying, hey, we see what you're advertising. And one of them was the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase. And he said, Herb, he said, there is no Ted DiBiase if there are no $1 Million Man if it wasn't for St. Louis. And I said, yeah, but I can't afford you on this one, Ted. And he said, oh, man, come on, I'll help you, So I had talent calling me and asking me for it. And and everybody you talk to will tell you St. Louis was always the hub of it because of Sam Muchnick and the way he ran the NWA.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the Chase Memorial and the Chase, the place called the Chase. Can you tell me one of the big moments, the biggest moment that you guys have done at the Chase?
Well, we haven't been ran at the Chase. I said we'll be back there in October
Okay,
15th will be my first show.
your
My
first show.
first
Okay,
show that I've been there myself. Now, I've been there for other events, wrestling shows, but this will be the first time that SICW has went there. So, that could be the full circle, as you say, in the business,
yeah,
because I've done them everywhere else, but to go back to where it all started with the NWA under Sam Muchnick in 1959, May 23rd, I believe it was, when they first started there, um, I think is a full circle. So I don't want to I don't want to let any cats out of the bag, but that could be the climax that you talk about.
gotcha.
But the Chase was the place. The Chase, the Koppler family owned the television station that carried the wrestling at the Chase. They owned the hotel there, and for years the Coruscant Room was the place where the wrestling took place. Elegant. Tables with the tablecloths, women dressed up with their pearl necklaces on, guys smoking their stogies. It was actually a classy place. The ring announcer wore a tuxedo. Just the saying, the Chase was the place was it. And when wrestling was there, they all came out. And then when color TV started coming into play, the cameras cost so much money at that time, and moving them back and forth, they were taking a chance of damaging them. So they had TV studio right behind the wall of the Coruscant room. So then they moved into the TV studio, and that's where it became the studio audience, kind of similar to what we do on ours. Three side seating. We use two side. They had three sides, and we can put three sides, but right now we use two sides for a studio audience because you don't need that many folks for that. But and then that's where it came on, uh, and ran until Sam Muchnick retired in January 1st of 1982, with a big celebration named it was Sam Muchnick Day, and gave him the key to the city, and all the greats came back and visited him, and the mayor of the city and the congressmen and everybody, because he was so well liked and known. But so I'm looking forward to going back to the Chase and going there to promote the SICW show.
That's awesome, man. So you were you were inducted into the St. Louis Wrestling Hall of Fame. Is that correct?
Yeah, Independent Wrestling Hall of Fame. And another thing, there's a couple of different Hall of Fames. Larry Matisek, myself, and a couple other individuals formed the St. Louis uh, Wrestling Hall of Fame, which consists of the people who were involved with the NWA, basically Sam Muchnick. So the likes of Sam Muchnick, Larry, O'Connor, Flair, the Von Erichs, Whipper Billy Watson, Fritz Von Erich, Cowboy Bob Ellis. And I mean, there's like 44, 45 of those great individuals that have been inducted into the St. Louis Wrestling Hall of Fame. And then there is the Independent Wrestling Hall of Fame that myself and my late great friend, who we done shows all over from the South Broadway Athletic Club, Tony Costa, were inducted. They kind of did a trickery on me. They asked me to come over and help induct him into it. And after we did that, they turned right around and the same night and inducted him and I, because him and I were in partners basically, and we traveled all over the Midwest doing shows together. He was my junior heavyweight champion for a long time, and so they inducted both of us into that St. Louis Independent Wrestling Hall of Fame. And then there's another one that another Independent Hall of Fame that the American Championship Wrestling guy, the Searcher, basically is the head of they inducted us into that Hall of Fame also.
Okay. I've had the pleasure in the last month or so to interview some guys from NWA. My recent one was Koa. He's an up and coming guy from in NWA. He told me a little bit about that. So I'm curious. I don't watch a lot of NWA. I probably should. That's probably better stuff than WWE and AEW. So,
Yeah, I don't watch it. I've dealt with, after Trevor Murdoch won the title, his first title defense was against Telecon. I promoted. Billy Corgan and I came to an agreement on that. And so we had that match in St. Louis and it was a great match. And
awesome.
Then Nick Aldis, I had Nick against the Telecon in another show that they just tore the place down on. It was probably one of the top 5 matches that I enjoyed in my entire career.
Awesome. In today's wrestling, do you think there's too many gimmicks in the business today?
Yeah, I think so. I think that, and I see it more when nowadays these young guys come in and the first thing they want to start talking about is here's my gimmick. This is what I want to do. This is what I want to, and I think that, you got to learn the basics first, because I've seen guys come in with an idea that will change after they get in there. I've seen guys walk in and after the first couple of nights of training, they don't come back. They decide it's not for them. And, as I said, Cowboy Bob Orton Jr. Is a good friend of mine, runs our academy. I do a lot of work with him, and he still goes out there and wrestles. And like I said, him and Mr. USA Tony Atlas was my tag team champions here just up till a few months ago. And but he's helping train the next generation of young men and women. And so I think they need to leave their gimmicks outside the door and learn the basics. And then that will all come secondary, because it's just, when a guy walks in and starts talking about, hey, what do I got to do to be a champion? Or what do I got to do to this? That he's probably not going to last long, because that's a red flag that he hasn't got his mindset. He's got an ego problem. I tell them, people on the podcasts that I do, that the worst enemy we got out there nowadays is a 3-letter word called ego. And, they watch this local stuff. I mean, the now stuff on the big stage, and they want to go out there and flop around like a fish out of water. And it doesn't take that to get the crowd involved. It doesn't take that to get yourself over. First, just learn the basics, tell the story, and you'll get over.
So what has changed the most today in today's wrestling promotion compared to when you got into business 50 years ago?
Well, what's changed is oversaturation. I mean, it's just, as I said earlier, we cringed, couldn't wait for the next week to see the next episode of what was going to happen. Yeah. And now you don't have to. Now you can turn on wrestling almost any night of the week and find it if you want to. And what are you finding? You're finding 2 guys going out there that doesn't tell no story. I can't. If somebody said, I'll give you $100 for every wrestler you can name on the WWE roster now, I can probably make $100, because I helped give Randy Orton his first match at the South Broadway Athletic Club when he first started. And I dearly love Randy, because, of course, his dad is our trainer. And but I don't know these other guys. And I'm not saying anything against them. They're going out there working their tail off, and they're entertaining. They're doing their thing. But I just think that it's oversaturated. Once the curtain got pulled back, and the genie came out of the bottle, there are still people out there who want to be entertained. And we tell them all the time, for 2.5 hours, I'm going to take you into a land of make-believe. I'm going to make you not worry about the price of gasoline or the price of milk and eggs. Now, realistically, in reality, you got to come back to that thought. But for 2.5 hours, we are going to make you have a good time. We're gonna let you boo the bad guys and cheer the good guys. And that's what wrestling was about: evil, bad, and good. And that's what we do at SICW. And when I stand at the door after a show and thank the fans for coming, and they tell me, they say, man, Herb, just when we thought we had that match figured out, you pulled a rabbit out of the hat. That's when fans are fans. They're not sitting there playing solitary on their phone.
Right.
They're not. If they got their phones out, they're usually taking pictures. But
Right.
when I see some of the other promotions, I see people sitting there like they're sleeping, or they're texting on their phones. Our fans are, they are invested. They are rooting and they are screaming from the moment that national anthem stops playing. The cheers are on for the rest of the night, and that's when you got a successful evening.
Right. Your champ said that she said guaranteed money and contracts before everyone tried to be the best. Now they don't have to try. And I gotta agree. So I want to ask this question. So do you think the Vince McMahons of today, like and Tony Khan's, ruined wrestling compared to what you guys created back in the 70s?
Well, ruined is a harsh word. I think that Vince did what he said he was going to do, and I don't know if you'll remember, but back in the day when he took over, he said he would either uh, control everything in the business or he would turn it into a circus. And if you stop and think, we had Doink the Clown, we had the Insane Posse. So he's done just about everything he said he was going to do. He had guys coming out dressed up like hot dogs and you
Yep.
name it.
Yep.
And every time I saw something like that, I thought, boy, oh boy, Sam Muchnick and people like Paul Bosch, promoter from down in the Texas area, and all the other promoters who are out there are probably all turning over in their grave, because now you can't knock that, because look at what it's made him. It's made him
Right.
one of the wealthiest people out there, the business. But, the difference between what was being done back then was wrestling. What they're doing now is they are marketing toys and games and everything like that. So they're not making the money in the wrestling; they're making the money on the marketing side of it.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, as fans, I can tell you the topic of conversation a lot of times is the internet and dirt sheets. And I have to say that ruined wrestling for fans today, because you go to bed today and your phone blows up all night long and you get notifications that this happened in the WWE, this happened over here, this happened over here. But when even as a kid in the 80s watching Saturday Night's Main Event, there wasn't dirt sheets, so we didn't know. Now I can tell you tomorrow what's going to happen at SummerSlam on Saturday, and it's like, so do you feel the same way? Do you think dirt sheets have ruined it for fans?
Well, I'm kind of on the fence on that. Dave Meltzer is a friend of mine. I met him through Larry Matisek, and I think that back when Vince was trying to take over everything, the people that were feeding all that information were people who were being crapped on the most. And so I think that back in the day, it had its place, but now I think that I don't like the idea of, like you said, you can wake up tomorrow and know what's going to happen at SummerSlam. I think that takes the mystique out of it, and I wish that would not happen. But Dave's been doing it a long, long time. He's made a living at doing it, and as long as people keep giving him the information and other dirt sheet stuff like that, they're going to continue to do it, because it's the way of them making their living.
Right.
But people can control that. They can just not turn on and watch it.
Yeah. No, you're right. No, you're right. I can't say you're wrong, because I don't have to look at that notification, because
But
so
again, it's that intrigue. And again, that's what I don't like about it. I don't want to know. I mean, I just when I used to do the television work over at South Broadway Athletic Club for my friend, for his show he put on there every month, he'd call me and start to tell me. I said, I don't want to know, because I'm sitting there doing the color, the play-by-play. I want to have that. I want to experience that excitement also. And I think it comes across better as the commentator that, oh my gosh, this just happened. If you tell me ahead of time, then I'm kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, this is what's happening. Yeah.
Oh, you're right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. What's your thoughts on Jim Cornette? Have you had any
Love him, love him,
love him?
love
Okay.
him. Great guy. I talked to him quite a bit, and he's got the only other set of the full programs that I've got. But and I know he takes a lot of bashing, but I'm going to tell you, he's a man of many words, and he. I mean, I've had him in, and he's done shows for me. He doesn't do a lot of traveling anymore, but because he don't like to fly, of course. But I I listen to his shows whenever I get a chance, and yeah, he gets a little tough on people, but he's a guy that's been in the business, that's been treated wrong over the years, and there's a lot of the guys out there that have got an axe to grind with promoters of the past and the present, and I can't fault them for that because back in the day, these guys back then the guys didn't have jets flying around, and they were road trips. They were going 200-300 miles from one town to another, and then you get there, and the money's not right, and we'll catch you the next time down the road, and so it left a bad taste in a lot of their mouths, and that's one of the lessons I learned. If I tell you I need you to come in and this is what I'm going to pay you, it's there when you get here.
Yeah. No, I love Jim Cornette, so it's good. Do you feel training schools have changed over the years? Have they become softer, or do you think they're not teaching the right things that they used to teach?
Well, that's funny you bring that up because back in the day there were no training schools.
Okay.
There were guys out there that got thrown in. They'd show up at a place at a promotion, and a guy would throw them in there, and back then they called them jobbers, and today we call them enhancement workers.
Right.
But there wasn't a lot of training schools back there. A guy like Dr. D. David Schultz, if you ever talk to him, he'll tell you his training school basically was a guy that just beat the crap out of him for about 7 days in a row, trying to break him not to come back. And he came back every day, but he went home every night sore and hardly able to get out of the car. Um, but the schools, since training schools have become more prevalent, I think that they have lost the concept of the basics. The simple takedowns. The arm drags, and again, it's what our people, our senior guys under Bob Orton, they teach. Get your cardio. Try to work that the best, because without the cardio, you're not going to go long. And then if you follow the regiment that they have, it all comes together at the end. And we've turned out some guys that, are they ever going to be on the big stage? Again, we tell them from the first day, don't quit your day job. If you think you're going to come in here and be the next Vince McMahon, a superstar, the odds of that is zero. People like, and I've had guys like Gary Jackson. Gary Jackson has worked for the WWF. Attila Khan's worked for him. I had a guy who was my champion for many years, a great friend of mine, Ron Powers, worked for them in the WCW. So, I mean, guys that have been with SICW have went on to be on the main stage, whether it be in dark matches or being the jobber. But, I've always said, without good enhancement workers, or jobbers, as they called them back then, there is no stars. Hulk Hogan had to have somebody to beat up. Stone Cold had to have somebody to beat up to get him into those main events. So
Right.
Back in the day, guys like Mike George, guys like Roger Kirby, Bulldog Bob Brown, people like that, they all went out there and did their job, and they got paid to do it, and they made a living out of doing it.
Can you explain to the fans, us and myself, what was your thought process of bringing old school feel to today's industry and today's SICW promotion?
Well, as I've alluded to, I think that you have to know what where wrestling came from, and where we want it to be today, and even moving forward. And if we don't have that old school still being shown today or done today, then we lose all of that. And I think that, yes, there's a percentage of the fans out there that turn on and watch Monday Night Raw, and they watch Tuesday night this, and Wednesday night that, and Thursday night this, and Friday night that. But what are they watching? They're watching everything that is, like I said, basically high spots. You can't keep up with it. Half the time, you don't know where they're going, what the angles are they're shooting. But I guarantee you, if you look at an SICW show on a Sunday night on YouTube or on Facebook or on Paranormal TV or on Roku, if you watch the first episode of it, you're going to say, wait a minute, let me watch the second episode here. And the second episode will further tell the story. And then it's like getting hooked. It's like, man, I gotta watch the third episode, and because the storylines continue to unfold.
Right.
And I think that's what is definitely lacking now in our business. The big Texan, the gentleman who's been on there with us tonight, will tell you his storyline and his feud that went against the Telecom went for several months before he finally got a title shot. Just about the time he was reaching out for that carrot that was dangling, it got ripped away from him because of outside interference or something like that. But finally, it come down to where it was a match that they were in, and his side won, and he got to pick the stipulation of the match, and he picked the Texas Death Match. So the fans were like, "Whoa, wow, this is great!" But that was over a several months period. It wasn't just like you tuned in tonight, and then next month, oh, he's got a title shot. Well, that happens on TV all the time. But the SICW fans gets the benefit of following that storyline all the way.
The wrestlers get hurt more frequently doing those hot spots and flippy flop.
Well, and that's a question. And that's a question I get asked. If go back, and history will tell you, injuries back in the day were far less than what they are now. And people say, "Oh, well, yeah, but they didn't wrestle as much." I said, what are you talking about? Those guys not only wrestled, they were wrestling 7 nights a week a lot of times, traveling from town to town. But they weren't getting in there. They knew what they were doing. They weren't doing. If you look at some of the old tapes, you'll see the ropes how they were. They didn't use the ropes to do all the springboards and all this stuff because they wrestled. They knew how to mix it up if they had to. I guarantee you, we had a little training thing and had a little appreciation night for the guys here a couple of months ago, and it was one night of the training and had a little pot lunch. And they sat there and watched some matches that had Don Morocco in it, and I think Killer Kowalski. And you could count the times they hit the ropes. The rest of it was, it was tough. Punches were good, but they weren't up jumping off and doing hermacratas or whatever they called it and all that crap. It was just good old school wrestling, and the crowd was into it, and I think that's what people enjoy. And then they enjoy the unknown. There for many years, you could tell who was going to win a match by who came out first, and I guarantee you at SICW, we pull the rabbit out of the hat and we do some tricks,
Yeah. Big Jim says, plus the old school wrestlers wrestled for an hour every night now. They call that an Iron Man match. You're exactly right, because the big match, some of the big stars like I love Roman Reigns, but he's comes out and he doesn't wrestle except for the pay-per-views. He gets in there, takes a couple bumps, and that's it. But
I'll tell you what, last year we had a cage match, and the cage match was Attila Khan and Jake Prater of Devastation Incorporated. And guess who their opponents were? Haku and the Barbarian.
Okay. Yeah.
In a cage match. And they tore the place. And they tore the place down.
I bet.
Yeah. So, and Haku, I was just with him up in Waterloo, Iowa, a couple of weeks ago, and great guy, tough guy, one of the toughest, if not the toughest in the business. Can still get out there and go and do it. but that's the kind of show you'll see at SICW. And it's not just the legends. Like I said, it's the guys like the Big Texans and the superstar Steve Fenders and the guys like that that go out there and know how to work and know how to take care of their opponents and still tell that storyline, because at the end of the night we want the fans to be happy. We want them going home saying, "Hey, when's the next SICW show?"
Right. So I can tell you right now, an hour and 10 minutes into this, I'm intrigued to see more SICW. So,
Well, I appreciate that.
do you see any of your talent on your show that you think would have made it in the territorial days?
Oh yes, yes, without a doubt. In fact, if you go back and read a couple of Larry Matasek's book, he even alluded to that. Guys like the Big Texan, guys like Ron Powers, guys like the Giant Assassin back in the day. It was just an unfortunate time that they were at the time they were. Because now, if the territories was as prominent as they were back then, I could pick up the telephone and you could call a Paul Bosch, or you could call a Stu Hart up in Calgary and say, "Hey, I've got the Big Texan here. I've had him here for 6 months and he's did a lot of business, but now he's kind of burned out. Can we send him up there for 3 to 6 months?" And the response would be, "Okay, send me some tapes. Let me see what you got." And boom, I guarantee you, any of those guys I just named, they would say, "Yep, get him up here," because that's how the territorial days worked back then. And you may take him up there. He may have been my big baby here, but they get him up there, they may turn him into the biggest deal ever. But yeah, I've got guys in my locker room right now that if Jason Jones from Mid States Championship Wrestling calls me, or Troy Peterson would call me and say, "Hey, I need the Texan, or I need a Tiller, or Gary," they know they're going to get their money's worth with the guys.
Awesome. And I had to tell you, I put this down in my notes last. I love the question, and I had to sit there and between dealing with the kiddos and things going on in our house today. The thing I was watching was, where was Kevin Von Erich born? And I had to fast forward and had to clip it out to find out that he was born in Belleville, Illinois, St. Elizabeth Hospital. So I had to.
Yep.
That was pretty cool to hear that. So, Mr. Simmons, where can we get the book? One of the two books. Where could I go find that book? Is it on Amazon? Could I go?
Yeah, Amazon will have either one of them. Like I said, Larry's. If you search Larry Matasek's name, you'll see all the books that he's written.
Okay.
And up on his when he passed away, he was on his last book he was working on. He had all but one chapter done. I have the entire transcript of every chapter, but the last one it didn't finish. And someday his wife and I keep saying that we're going to finish that last chapter, because we know what he wanted to put in that, but we just have not brought ourselves to do that. And that book was going to be the difference between Sam Muchnick and Vince McMahon, because Larry Matasek, worked for Sam Muchnick for 10 years after his business shut down, and which was the 10 most dreadful years of his life, he would say. But then all the other years with Sam was, a walk in the park for him. And so the book was it was the toughest book he had to write, because he cherished so much of Sam's relationship, and he despised so much of Vince's. And I told him, I said, "You have made that so abundantly known to fans over the years. You gotta." And all the other books were, straightforward, honest, factual. And I said, you got to be fair in this one. You can't take it away from what Vince has done in the business, good, bad, or indifference. He's made what he's made out of it, and Sam did what he did, and you got to live both of those parts. He did real good about being fair about that. But yeah, Amazon, just go in there and Google or search Larry Matasek, and then Ed Wheatley. You'll find a lot of books under Ed. He did a lot of baseball books in St. Louis, the St. Louis Browns, but he did the Wrestling at the Chase book, and then the Head Over Heels documentary on wrestling.
Awesome. And now, where can we find SICW? On Facebook, on Instagram, and all those?
No, it's Instagram. I don't even know how to spell Instagram.
All right. Hey.
But YouTube. I mean, Facebook is the best way to find me. SICW. Just search me, Herb Simmons. I'm very active on that. I promote something about the wrestling every day. Usually in the evening time, I'll get caught up and answer questions or post pictures. SICW Explosion. Email promoter at sicw.org if anybody's got any questions. Like I said, we try to keep our website updated, but sometimes websites fall behind when everything else is going on. We've got shows booked all the way through the end of the year, into next year already, and like I said, they're for organizations that we help raise money for, whether it be the local fire departments needing something, or I mean, like last night, I just booked a show in Perryville, Missouri for the Legion Hall. So it's the word gets out there, and it's been out there. And like you said, we may be the longest running promotion out there. If we are, that's fine. If not, I really don't care. We're going to do what we can do until the gas gets down to the E.
And I got to say, one of the thing I'm most impressed about is you do stuff for other organizations to raise money for their organizations. And for that, I do applaud you for that. I think your roster, SICW, is amazing for doing something like that. So my hands go down to you saying thank you so much for helping organizations throughout all over you travel. So I appreciate that. And is the Fan Fest #2, is that in this next May of 2024, or do we not have a date yet?
If there's going to be one, it would be in May, because that's our Bruiser Brody month that we do.
Okay.
Barbara Goodish, Bruiser Brody's widow. Like I said, I always work around her schedule. Like this weekend, she's down at the Gathering in the Carolinas, a big Fan Fest they have there. And 2 weeks ago, she was up in Waterloo, Iowa with me. And so she's out. She's a part of the wrestling family. And back in the day, she didn't get to do that when Bruiser Brody was out wrestling. She stayed at home with her son. And but now Bruiser Brody's name is one of the ones that will never be forgotten, not only because of the way he was murdered, but he was such a great piece of talent that didn't take any guff, and all the promoters wanted him, even the ones that didn't really like him, wanted him to come in because he meant money to them. Awesome. And when you had him and Abdullah the Butcher, guys like that, or down in Texas when he was with the Von Erichs, and they all wanted Bruiser Brody because they knew that when they put his name on the marquee, fans were going to come to see him.
Yeah. Well, Mr. Simmons, I thank you for your time. I thank all the people that were in the chat for their time. Huge Prop Wrestling fans, please subscribe and follow the show. You can come back and rewatch the podcast with Herb Simmons on it. I am so blessed to have the opportunity to talk to you. I'm going to play the exit song, and I'm just going to, don't go anywhere. I'll meet you in the lobby, all right?
Fine, thank you.